Well, just 8 days before President Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un are set to meet face-to-face in Singapore, North Korea is shaking up its military leadership. The country's top 3 military officials are out. Their replacements, younger, staunch Kim loyalists who also are said to have experience interacting with foreign delegations. Now, this comes as preparations are in full swing for the June 12th summit, the first time a sitting US president will meet with the North Korean leader. And CNN international diplomatic editor Nic Robertson is in Seoul, South Korea. He joins us now live. Good to see you, Nic. So let's start with this latest development, the replacement of these 3 top North Korean military officials by Kim Jong-un ahead of the June 12th summit. What might this signal, do you think?
So it's the defense chief, it's the head of the army and the head of the army's political bureau. These are obviously very influential positions. The head of the political bureau for the Korean People's Army is an influential position in of itself because it is concerned directly with the finances that are connected to the military, that the military has overview on, which includes a lot of business interests. However, what does this mean at the moment? It's not clear. As these newer appointees we're being told are Kim loyalists, then one might reasonably assume that is firming up his power base. But we've known that's been pretty strong for some time, and he's had a reshuffle in the military not so long back as well. So I think, if we look at this, if we really step back from it, the conclusion that's perhaps the best one to draw is that Kim is changing his position a little. However, that said, when he decided or said that he was ready to accept a meeting with President Assad of Syria, he was sort of sticking to his, sticking to a position of a recalcitrant leader, if you will, that doesn't go along with the rest of the world. So the message when he goes to see President Trump in a little over a week's time doesn't necessarily mean that he's reshaping, his key personnel behind him for some significant shift of character and of strategy. No, because he's giving other signals that would indicate otherwise. So it's very difficult to try to sort of overanalyze this without more information. It may become apparent in the coming days, but it certainly is an indication that there is change underway. Was it mean left or right? Not clear.
Right. And Nic, President Trump, of course, initially talked up this summit with notions of walking away with an historic deal. Now he's playing down those expectations. So what's the most that can come out of this summit? And why is Defense Secretary Mattis reminding everyone that US troops will remain in South Korea? Is that for Mr. Trump's benefit or to calm nerves in South Korea and Japan?
It certainly does seem to a degree to calm nerves in South Korea and Japan, and perhaps more so in Japan. Japan's defense minister at the conference that Secretary Mattis was attending in Singapore over the weekend expressed concern that President Trump was saying that he won't use the language that he calls, extreme pressure, which is the language he used around the sanctions on North Korea. And there was concern, particularly again coming from the Japanese defense minister, that Kim Jong-un hasn't put anything on the table. He hasn't made a commitment for denuclearization or about chemical weapons, biological weapons, ballistic missiles, and that therefore to get a meeting with President Trump, the view from Japan, a staunch ally of the United States, is this really raises questions about what can be achieved, and that was their concern. So Secretary Mattis was saying, look, trust is what's key to our common security, South Korea, Japan, the United States in the region. We need to build that trust. We need to be open and transparent with each other. But it's in that strength, in our trust and our common security bond, we're not reducing our troops, that, our diplomats can do their job. So, if you will, in military terms, is providing sort of top cover for President Trump, saying that they're not going to reduce the troops on the Korean Peninsula. That would have significantly worried the Japanese. Secretary Mattis, playing the hand here that his making sure everything on his side is clear for President Trump to come in and do what is his intent with Kim Jong-un. Rosemary?
Right, our reporter there, Nic Robertson, bringing us up to date on the situation where it's nearly, 3:15 in the afternoon there in Seoul. Many thanks to you, Nic. Well, Graham Ong-Webb joins us now from Singapore. He is a research fellow at the S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies. Good to have you with us.
Thank you.
Now, as we mentioned, you're in Singapore. That, of course, is where all the action takes place, and just over a week from now. What's the most that can be achieved in this first face-to-face meeting between President Trump and Kim Jong-un?
Well, yes, you're quite right. There's a lot of anticipation building up in Singapore, being the hosts of this summit, this very important summit, very high stakes. But I think observers here in this country and in the region have a very low bar in terms of the expectation coming out of the summit. This is an unprecedented historical event. We have a sitting US President Donald Trump, Mr. Kim Jong-un, meeting two heads of state, meeting eye to eye for the first time over this ongoing crisis, decades-long crisis. And the bar is set pretty low because I think for many of us, we think that just the two of them building rapport, striking it off and really establishing a working relationship would in and of itself be a huge success coming out of the summit. I mean, never mind all the other declarations or agreements that we were expecting from it. But for these two important people in the room have to get along with each other in order to negotiate the terms of denuclearization.
But is that more a success for Kim Jong-un because he, his father and his grandfather have been wanting to sit down with the US president for so long? Now they're getting that opportunity, but it doesn't appear that they're having to give very much up for that.
You're quite right, and this is what concerns many of us, that the fundamental goals of the Kim Jong-un's regime, Mr. Kim Jong-un himself, are actually quite different from the goals set out by the Trump administration and all the other stakeholders involved in this critical issue. The goals for the DPRK really are quite simple. It's about getting that handshake in the room with the leader of the world's sole superpower and getting lots of cachet, a lot of legitimacy from that. Mind you, Mr. Kim Jong-un has had to work quite hard to earn his place as the leader of the DPRK. It's easy to overlook that fact. It wasn't just handed to him. He's had to earn it over the last few years, and not less than a decade, upon coming to power in 2011. He's 2 steps away from this hereditary rule of Mr. Kim Il-sung. And so he's had to build his place in the history of the DPRK. And so shaking hands with President Donald Trump is going to build a lot of legitimacy, consolidate his power in the eyes of his own people, which will allow him to rule over the DPRK going forward for some time to come.
But will he give anything up? And will he really venture into the realm of this concept of denuclearization, which of course means one thing for the United States and another thing for North Korea?
Well, I would argue that he has to, and I think he knows this. And this is where I think we get into the sticky areas of this whole event, about what exactly the DPRK, Mr. Kim Jong-un, the kind of concessions that they are going to make when they meet with President Donald Trump on the 12th of June. I mean, something tangible clearly has to come out from this meeting. It's not certain what this tangibility is going to be, but I think some concessions have to be made. And coming back to the point about the 3 top military officials, being replaced by younger generals, that could be a positive sign. It's still too early to say. I agree with the correspondent earlier on. But I think more needs to be done. So one is expecting that he will address directly the issue of denuclearization, what that's going to look like, and also the verifiability of that as well. In order for any lasting deal to be in place, the DPRK clearly will have to abide by this notion of verification and irreversibility.
Graham Ong-Webb, thank you so much for sharing your analysis with us. We do appreciate it, and we'll all be watching very closely on June 12th to see what does come out of this summit.